All right, well, I guess I hope that the speed works today. We're going to be building a web chat framework. So we'll see. Just going to put that up because it's pretty. And we'll get started in a minute, I guess. All right, we'll get started. We'll get started soon. I'm just like waiting for my tea because I've got my beautiful federal federal defense accounts district mug. All right, my guys. All right, what are we going to build today? We're going to build a web chat framework, which is something that I'm actually struggling with quite a bit. Like I've done many web chat applications, but actually it's pretty fucking challenging as far as like at least I struggle with it, and because especially I want to have something reusable, right? Like I have many applications that are kind of like chat like. Oh fuck. I put some tea everywhere as usual. Um, in that, well, um, the idea is like, you have a chat window and then you can stream stuff to it so that it's like, that's like live streaming. And you might realize that it's pretty complicated just from the fact that they all suck out there. Um, and so you have these streaming events that come in. You have like rich widgets, more and more that happen, right? But you also have to handle like reloading. You have to handle like cancellation. You have to handle like retries. What happens if you have the same conversation open twice? What happens if there's disconnects on the back end? What like there's just like a lot of stuff in there that well I try to cover them all, and then it ends up being something that's like pretty unclear, and especially it's like not really reusable. You've got things like starting a conversation. Often I want to like change the profile, change like the setting of it. Um, so either I do it like very app specific and then pull in this kind of like pattern that I have to do, say, WebSocket things. Um, but I want something generic, and I've tried multiple times, and I have like something that's called web chat in my Pinocchio framework, and it is it has turned into quite of a vibe mess as well recently because um, I've just wanted to get stuff done, and it actually works, but it is a mouthful. So you can see that on here um, in the number of files that are just like in here. Like this is kind of there's like a send queue and there's a stream backend and there's a router timeline API and there's a router and there's a conversation. Like there's just like so much stuff in there. And I started doing some ChatGPT Pro analyses because I realized like, oh, this is probably like just a little bit too much for my brain to properly handle. What's my cat doing? Oh, my cat wants to. Hold on. I blocked off my cat's tunnel. So my cat was like not very happy. Um, so I did a bunch of like research here, and I wonder if I can. What is making noises? Anyway, sorry about that. So I had a bunch of analyses. I think they're in here, where I was like, hey, here's all the source code. Like, tell me what's kind of off, and like what can I refactor, which was pretty good. I think there's like a bunch of organizational things here that I'm going to be reusing. Um, and in fact, I did start a project a while ago of of refactoring this, and I think it's called Chat from Scratch. I think. Uh, or extract web chat, I think was the one. And this was a while ago. I think created April 7th, so actually not that long ago. But we're going to go in here, and if I look at the status of the project, I think most of the modules have like advanced quite a bit in here. So there's a good chance that I might just like um, delete all of this, right? So I can go into Clay and rebase that, which is not that important of a package. There's Geppetto is like maybe the most important one. And then here, I wonder if I did any work on here. I didn't do any work, so I didn't start anything here, which is actually pretty good. And then I think I started this package called le chat, where I already have like one ticket. So we're gonna commit this ticket. And then what do we have here? LLM chat API. I don't know what that is. And there's also like packages that I've renamed since then. So that's interesting too. Anyway, we'll look at this later on. So what is this? This is also just a single ticket. Oh no, this starts to have a bunch of, I think this was just an experiment that I had ChatGPT do, and I think it was like not all that useful. So I'm going to go in here and just remove that to not confuse the LLM. I'm just gonna like push it to my GitHub just to get a trace of this. It's not even committed, so this is probably just something I downloaded from ChatGPT Pro, which I think was like not all that amenable. Did I just delete everything? Why is this nothing to commit? Branch clean. There's like tons of files in here. Initial commit. Okay. Current direct. Oh, because this is a work tree. All right. So this must be. I think I can just remove this. All right. And then if I go to the original directory, LLM chat API, then I'm just going to push that. And I'm going to push it. Why not in public? All right. We're here. We're in a clean spot, I think. We don't have LLM chat API. I thought this was, what did I do? This is amazing. Workspaces, LLM chat API. No, what is it called? Extract web chat. And then we have okay, so name. I'm just gonna remove this. I have to clean up my workspace manager one day. All right, workspace manager status. Le chat is not merged. That's where we just committed the ticket. So we're pretty much starting from scratch. And hey BH site. So Pinocchio is just my web framework. Well, not web framework. It's my framework to do chat applications on top of LLMs. Like I have an LLM library called Geppetto because it was for GPT-3 originally, and then I built Pinocchio on top of it. And like the most use I make out of Pinocchio is like kind of just as a command line chat application. I barely use it these days because I'm mostly encoding agents. But I use it as framework for web chat, for example, right? So I can do this in here, and then it has like all this kind of streaming structured data. It has like a whole framework for prompting as well, which was really useful back in the days when something like this didn't exist. Now with agent models, it has not had as much use from my part, but it really should. And turning this web chat that I have in Pinocchio, which is I'm going to see if I can get it to run. Um, I think I probably have to go generate first. Um, I'll show a little bit what the inbuilt like kind of example web chat. So yeah, maybe it's more like a building framework for building things like open code, maybe. Um, but I've built applications for work on top of it. Um, but I haven't really like built everything that I wanted out of it. Partly because I'm just overthinking it. And you'll probably see what I'm doing right now is probably going to be overthinking it as well. But let me just see if I can. Where's my package JSON? It's in here. Let me just show you what it can do right now. It has like a full, it records all the interaction with the LLM to disk as well. It's also like a distributed event system. So I could be running this on one computer and like kind of listen to it on like a ton of different end nodes. Like when I do this like command line terminal UI that I just showed you, it's actually going through Redis, or it could be going through Redis. It's pretty, it's pretty involved, and it comes in useful because at work, it was running like for a lot of clients and customers and stuff like that. I hope that this works. Yeah, so it allows you to build things like this, right? I'm not sure why it can do all kinds of like structured data extraction here, which I'm not sure if it has it. So there's agent mode, become an analyst. I'm not sure if this will trigger some of these richer events that can be done. So of course you have like just the standard thinking kind of scrolling. And this is just a demo application, right? I'm currently in financial analyst mode. And then, so this is like kind of thinking that's hidden. What become a regex expert? Hopefully this will trigger some of the example things. Obviously at work, have like many more functionality here. Is it going to do one of those? Yeah, so see, for example, here it had like a special event that's called like agent switching, and it like renders, a special event. You can very easily define these in like 2 lines of code, but for that, the framework is like pretty intricate, and it's become so intricate that I can't really reuse it easily, and I'm confused, and I want to build something that's like a little bit simpler now that I have the experience to do it, right? With like reconnection and canceling and like resuming, and what happens if it fails in the middle, and like what happens when you press refresh. All of these things are kind of tricky to handle. So this is kind of the organization that ChatGPT Pro gave me when I just pasted a zip file back a while ago. I was just like, hey, here's all my code. It's kind of garbage. Can you help me like turn this into something more useful? I never followed up on it. And I think what I did today is actually I sat down. I think I had enough time to kind of think it through. And I'm going to try a new prompting technique where I take one of these diagrams, or maybe redraw cleaner diagrams, and then try to extract good prompts out of it that I can then use to build it, right? So we're actually going to try this right now, where I'm going to also play with different models just to see how far I go. I'm going to, for example, take Minimax, and I'm going to say, transcribe this image, describe the diagram. Actually, let's create a new doc manager ticket to create a reusable base framework for doing event streaming, LLM applications, agents, chats, etc. Transcribe this image, describe the diagram. And then I've got a second page where I have the building blocks, um, and write a architecture analysis doc and upload to Remarkable. Full experimental. This I've never done it this way. I think these are pretty messy. Actually, they're not that messy. I'll go into it explaining what this all does, and uh, then I'll maybe just mix in some of the previous documents that I had. I think this one is a pretty good analysis um, that kind of maps to this reusable pattern architecture that I have. But we'll see. I'm also curious if Minimax is able to, well, read my handwriting, which is pretty messy, and um, able to analyze the diagram, which is also really messy in some way. So I'm really curious to see what comes out. It's probably going to be garbage, um, but we'll see. And so Doc Manager is a tool of mine that allows you to create what I call tickets, which really are directories within the code base where LLMs will store all of their documents. Um, so so we'll see where that goes, and having this ticket directory just allows me to contain the slop and give it like some very clear structure. I'm gonna have a hard time talking at times because this is like kind of heady stuff. Um, so we'll see where it goes. But to give you an overview of what I think a chat application could be, or like a reusable chat thingy, gonna switch to what color do I want? Cyan. All right. So one of the components is just the source of it all. So the source in this case would be, say, a backend that does LLM inference, right? So like an agent runner or something like this. So this thing should have a really easy job. The only thing this backend should be able to have is like get some commands in. And can I reduce the opacity of this stuff? No, I can't, huh? And then events out. That's kind of, I want the backend, which is what I will integrate this framework into, to be as simple as possible. It should know almost nothing about all of the chat stuff. It should be, the backend should be able to send events out, right? And then these events are then received by the framework. The only thing it kind of needs is tagging those with, I call it conversation ID in these diagrams. I think session ID might be the better one, which is the front end needs to know, hey, this event that I received from the backend is for this specific conversation, and be able to route them. And the other thing that might be important is when I send this thing a command that will start some kind of process. So for example, when I say like, hey, the user inputted just a chat message, there's a possibility that this is linked to a profile. So I'm not sure if the profile ID should be in every event. That's also something that probably doesn't hurt. There's some kind of metadata that goes in that specifies how to configure this. And I think profile ID is maybe a little bit too precise already. It should be like, command metadata, or like, I don't know, session metadata, session backend metadata, something like that, that is specific to the backend, where I can say like, hey, I've got like a list of models, for example, or I've got like a thinking level, or, I want to route it to this thing, or maybe I am doing a code thing. So yeah, BH Sai. It's interesting because LLMs are just uh, very simple APIs, right? Like an LLM, it literally, at least with the APIs that we have, you have like a string in plus a set of parameters, right? Like, oh, which model, which thinking level, all of that stuff. But really, it's like a single string in and then a single string out, right? Like that's the quote unquote AI. Um, yeah. So I think agents to me are like prompt engineering patterns, right? Because if you have multiple agents, then the context window you're going to send in is going to be like, hey, I've got like an operator system prompt, right? Or like what were you saying, like analyst? Like the analyst part, what defines an analyst like an analyst agent is like part of this system prompt, and then the set of tools that it has, right? Like tool definitions, and then the question is like, what is the application specific content that you put in there? And what do you do with the output, right? Like after you send this to the LLM, you're going to have some output that is, oh, this is the output of an analyst. What do I do with the output of an analyst? Should I send it to the planner agent? And sending it to the planner agent just means like, hey, I'm going to copy paste this into the planning agent context window, right? So if this is, the planning, the planner, and then you could have like some planner context app specific. And then you could say like, hey, the analyst said that. So you kind of like wrap what the analyst reported and add some little snippets around it, for example. But really what you're doing is just building like a specific string, right? Yeah, exactly, right? Like so you're juggling HTTP calls with different strings, and the different strings are what are going to make the LLM behave, or your system behave, like there is an analyst role and a planning role and all of those, right? And so what I'm building, to bring it back to what I'm doing, and I hope I'm going to try to not go on too many tangents, but to bring it back to what I'm doing is like say, oh, this is my orchestration backend, right? So this part here, this is what I call the backend. In this first diagram that I had, is all of this is this part. And I realize that cyan is kind of like hard to read. So let me switch to blue. And so there's commands coming in here, right? From the user. Here's the user. That's like the human. And it says like, hey, build an app. That's an incoming command, which will trigger some kind of stuff. At this point, I don't care. And then this is going to output like a sequence of events. Things like, hey, I'm starting the agent, right? Like start analyst. And then maybe the analyst is going to be outputting some text deltas, right? Like straight from the LLM. Ding, 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 ding. And then one more text delta, ding, 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 ding. And then it's going to be like, hey, I've been plan step number 1. And so all of these events are kind of application specific, right? Like in your UI, you will have certain widgets to represent the analyst steps, and then maybe another widget to represent like the planner stream. So those are these events, right? Like that's everything the backend. So your agent orchestrator is going to send to the user to be displayed. Yeah, so the peer-to-peer, right, and decentralized, that's kind of what I'm going for here, is like I want multiple clients to connect to it, because users, even if there's only one user, they might open multiple tabs at once, right? So what do I do when they open multiple tabs? Like, how do I know which one's like the interactive one? Where do I stream to? That's a question that needs to be answered. I want both tabs to stream the same stuff, because it actually makes things easier. So however, I want the backend. The backend shouldn't be worrying about this, right? Like your agent system should really just be worried about calling the LLM and then saying like, hey, I've got a text delta from the LLM. It's the analyst. I'm going to transform it to this event and I'm going to send it out. That's all I want the backend to worry about. It shouldn't be worrying about connections to the front end. It shouldn't be worrying about retry, or, it shouldn't be worrying about displaying the thinking little thing. All of those things I want this generic framework to kind of offer you as a reusable functionality. Because indeed it is, once you start adding cancellation into it and hydration and storage and resuming, it starts to become pretty tricky. And so this would be the first part, is like kind of this backend part here. So really like the thing that usually people are interested in building is like, hey, how do I juggle agents and all of that? That should be as simple as possible. It should get commands in and it should send events out, and then that's it. And the commands can be, start and cancel usually. Maybe there's other things like, oh, I clicked on a planning thing, but that should be as simple as possible. And so the only thing that it kind of needs to carry through is saying like, hey, this is a certain conversation or session, so that I can have like two in parallel, or that I have multiple users having each their own agent session. Like that's something that needs to be carried through from the front end. And all right, sorry about that. So then we come to the second step, and so this is where my framework, or the thing that I want to build, starts. So it's kind of this here. It's kind of a mishmash of things, to be honest. So it's this section here. So this is the system I want to build. So you have incoming events from the backend, right? So those are the backend events over here. Going to keep them in blue. Backend events come in and they get to a dispatcher, and the dispatcher is there to be like, hey, this event belongs to this conversation. This event belongs to this conversation. And I'm calling them conversation, but I really should call them sessions. Session. Because the backend, I should just say like, hey, here's a text delta for this session. Like you figure out how to do it. I don't want to deal with managing sessions and stuff like that. I just want to manage my internal state, which might be related to sessions, but not necessarily. And so the session management is kind of important because many things depend on it that will become useful later on. And one of them, for example, is that I want to store these sessions, right? Like I want to be able to look at them later. I want to be able to resume them. Maybe the server crashes and I want to restart, and like the user shouldn't be like, oh shit, the server crashed, my conversation is gone. So the backend models these sessions, and the events that come in from the server, from the backend, once they're assigned to a session, I do want to process them and transform them to something that's more useful for a client. A front end is what I call it. And that's where you can plug in like an event processor. So this is pluggable. And this event processor is going to take server events plus session information. So session state, like for example, we're currently like waiting for the backend, right? Like it's currently spinning. Maybe I'll get like a timeout later on. So it has like state machines you could model. This is all up to what I call the client, right? So you as a developer provide. So all right, I'll look at the stream you linked later on, which is this one here. Oh, it's unreadable on my screen. And the client part is like kind of the representation in the front. And so the client part is going to be kind of interpreting backend events in terms of how they're going to be displayed. But this how they're going to be displayed, the way I think of it in the context of this framework and how I did it is like it's a timeline of entities is what I call them, which might not be like the best name, but there are just things that appear over time. They don't need to be necessarily in a chat in a sequence per se. Like you could have, things appearing on the side or appearing like being populated into say a Kanban list or whatever, but they're basically finished entities that are going to be received over time. And when I press refresh, these entities should appear again. So I need to store the entity somewhere, which is where these entities are, is like kind of the storage down here. So there's two storage. There's the storage of the session itself, and then there's the storage of these entities that have been transformed by these processors. So because when a user comes, they're not going to receive all the events from the beginning of the conversation. They just want to like quickly display everything, right? Okay, like now you're losing me what Jarvis is and all of these things, but I'll look it up. Like I think everybody struggles with the same issue. It's not necessarily a new problem either. And I've been building so many versions of this, and now I'm tired of like each time kind of being able to reuse half of it, but then not really, and then like some things don't work. So just to go back, we have event processor plugins, which basically take events and turn them into timeline entities. Gonna reuse those words because they're kind of weird enough that they work. And then on the final part of all of this, we do have clients, right? Like, so for example, just to make things simple, just a chat application in a browser. So a chat application in a browser is like this part down here, the yellow one. And those are connected over WebSocket. And I could make it more flexible. I'm just deciding like, hey, that it's WebSocket today. Like, it's good enough. I have to refrain. I'm someone who likes doing like very general stuff, which then never gets done. So today I'm just going to do WebSockets. And the WebSocket management is a tricky part. You have like connection pools. You have to keep them alive. You have to do like ping pong. You have to handle their disconnection and reconnection. You have to handle them in the front end as well, right? Like there's a whole part here that I want to provide that's in JavaScript for the front end. So you can just say like, hey, drag in this like React hook and you'll have like a WebSocket connection with timeline entities. And the second part is that the UI can send commands. It could potentially send them over WebSocket, but you could also just say like, hey, just send like this message to my claw or whatever. I don't necessarily need to open a WebSocket to do it. And at the end of the day, the transport doesn't matter all that much. And the third part we have is like then the hydration, which is where it tells you like, hey, I want to receive all the timeline entities you had for this session. And now I can listen to new events and like doing my thing. The other thing that you have here is like cancellation. But that's kind of the building blocks, right? So I wrote them up here. The generic layer, this is the framework we're building. And then we had in blue, we had the backend layer, which is, the backend orchestrator or LLM chat or whatever. And then we do have the front end, the client layer, which is what you're going to have in your browser or maybe in your terminal or, on your phone and your chat app, like whatever is good for you. And the generic layer provides WebSocket handling, right? It provides session objects. It provides events processing. It provides like commands. So you can register command. You can say like, hey, there's a command called start chat, and then this will trigger the backend. There's some generic hydration and timeline storage. And then there's just like, I don't know what generic timeline events actually means. On the client side, the client should provide a set of event schemas, right? Say like, hey, I've got these events and timeline objects. They have like these different properties, like thinking mode or not. They provide processors which transform backend events into timeline events. Um, and there's a set of commands. That's kind of what the client layer has to provide to the generic layer, right? So if I write code, I do import chat framework, which is this one here, right? So I'm calling it Le Chat because there's a comic from France. I'm French, so there's like a Belgian comic strip that was pretty popular when I was a kid. Um, yeah, from the 80s to the 2000s. Um, so this is the framework that I'm doing, and when you're writing a client, you're going to just say like, hey, import Le Chat, and then you're going to register your commands and your events, like your timeline events. And then you have a set of APIs you can call to do hydration and to do other things. Same for the backend. You're going to build your backend. You're going to say like import Le Chat. You're going to register your event schemas. You're going to say things like, hey, I've got thinking streaming. I've got chat streaming. I've got like a task completion event. And you're going to provide some commands, which is like, hey, there's a command called start chat. And there's a command called cancel chat, like that kind of stuff. I don't know if you need to provide event processors at all, actually. And then you can provide some session metadata to be stored by the front end, right? Because like the front end, I don't know actually if the front end needs to do session storage. We'll see about that. That's kind of the explanation. I hope it's like reasonably clear what I'm doing. So what I want to build today is like this part here. And I hope I gave it enough thought to hopefully have something that works at the end. And I'm very, very curious to see if Minimax was able to understand the diagram. Like that's the first thing. It's totally possible that it didn't understand anything and I will just have to write it by hand or so. So what I had Minimax do is like I pasted these images in here and then I had it write like an analysis. And what I usually do now is I'm going to have to shut up because I can't do this while talking and just go over this document that it created. Yeah, Le Chat versus WeChat. So I'm going to go over this a little bit in silence and then I'll report back to say if it was useful or not. And this is my standard workflow, right? I'll type something in the agent and then I'll go back to away from the computer and look at it on my tablet. And that kind of gives me the opportunity to do like some real thinking. I'm like I really don't try to use the agent more as like kind of one shot inference. Because that really helps me just build better software at the end of the day. All right. It's pretty good. Like at least it was able to transform some words properly. Reusable base framework for event-driven streaming LLM applications. Is that even what I told it here? Oh yeah, I said reusable base framework for doing event streaming LLM applications. Okay, never mind. And this is something that I do, right? It's like I will look at certain words and then I will try to figure out where do they come from. Well, I could give it voice commands, but like, I don't care. Like I can type this pretty quickly. I actually prefer typing and I will type something like that. And then often I'll go an hour without doing any kind of LLM stuff. I'll just like sit. I like one-shotting things. Like if I'm good, I should be able to do this first analysis and then I should be able to say, build it. And then it does it all. Like that's kind of my goal, right? It's like, if I'm not able to one-shot something, if I'm not able to say, I want this and then get this thing at the end, then I'm not doing real engineering. Then I'm just like, blah, 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 whatever. Then I'm like experimenting, which is good too. But in this case, I actually have a pretty clear image of what I want it to build. And so I'm not going to mess with the computer. And I don't need the speed of like saying 2 sentences. I can just type them by hand, right? It's like I'm not in a conversation. I treat this more like a compiler. So this is the agent is the compiler, and what I'm doing right now is like kind of writing the code, and then I'll write the code for like an hour, and then I'll say like compile, and if I'm good, it will work. If it doesn't, then I'll go back and say like, hey, why is my program broken? Do I need to rewind? Can I actually continue with the context that I have, because they're LLM after all? But I don't think of it as like a conversation or an interactive thing. I think of it as like, this is a terminal. I type in a command and I get a result back. I don't know if that makes sense. I wrote about it because I think thinking that this is interactive and you have to answer quickly and you have to like always have it running to provide value, I think actually makes your software worse. So I wrote an article where I do most of my work away from the computer, and I do it at the coffee shop, or I do it. You're seeing what I'm doing right now, and then sometimes I'll just like doodle, or I'll be at the park, right? Because it's more fun as well, but it also allows me to just think more. Um, so that's just for context. I'm going to continue seeing what it wrote up. I'm also experimenting with Minimax 2.7 here, which is a model that I don't really know, but I've realized that its writing is pretty good. And it's not really a very intelligent model. It's pretty cheap. This costs like 6 cents so far. But I realized that a lot of planning actually doesn't require that much intelligence, is something I've noticed. Like if the plan is well formulated or well thought out, I've already kind of done the planning, and transforming that into words that are coherent and like is doesn't need that much intelligence. And in fact, if you add like things like high or especially extra high, they'll just like start doing too much and actually destroying the clarity that a smaller model, because it's just going to be doing like streaming like stringing patterns together without making up too much of its own patterns through a thinking stream, actually results in just like clearer language, clearer APIs, clearer architecture. So it's really interesting to be. I've done a bunch of like this kind of upfront planning with dumber agents now, and I'm um, I'm kind of surprised. What requires a lot more intelligence is actually taking existing code and mapping it to something that's different. Like that, I found is where it really helps to have a thinking stream that is able to say like, well, maybe this is actually this, maybe this is that, maybe this is this. So I'm actually using a big ass model for the implementation if I know it's not a one shot, and then all the rest I do with like smaller models. And I did that because Claude became so bad. Um, so this is not local, right? Like this is running. I have the Minimax plan, and Minimax I think is a pretty big model. Um, but definitely open weights is a good thing, right? And then I also have the thinking stream of this thing. I don't even know if it's a thinking model. I think so, right? Yeah. I have the full thinking stream, right? Like it's not censored. It's like a little bit small here, um, but this allows me to do much better transcript analysis and like understand why it might have gone wrong in certain cases. All right, back to actually doing some work. So here, things that I noted is like loose coupling is not a word that I use very often. So it's actually a good word. And so that one, I wonder, did it find it in a file somewhere? Which could be, right? Um, like maybe it read it in some document. Let's see, what documents did it read? It actually didn't read shit. That's great. it really didn't read anything from the existing files, which is good. Like I don't want it to be influenced by existing code or existing things. So this really comes out entirely out of my input. Downstream is also not a word that I use personally, but they're good words, right? Like I focus very much on words. Hey, Andrew, how's it going? Welcome back. Right, you've been here before, out of my 3 viewers or something. How are you doing today? Um, yeah, I haven't streamed for a long time. I've like kind of had a phase. I've just been building tons of stuff. But today I'm like building a generic kind of. I'm building like a. Actually, let me push, and then you guys can like look at it by yourself. Uh, I'm building a web chat framework, which I realized is like a pretty complex thing. So if you want to write this down, this is the URL of. Actually, let me. Yeah, you should be able to see the URL here. Let me see. Can I? Let me try to. Oh my God, this is not very clear, is it? Is this good? I don't even remember all the fonts that you have with Figlet. Figlet, F script. How do I do F? Two script fonts are available, script and SM script. And I always forget this stuff. SM script. Oh my God. Oh, I see. Do they have something like that's called small? There we go. So anyway, this is if you go in here, actually, if you go into this branch, task extract web chat. Actually, let me put this in here. This branch, task extract web chat, and if you go into the ttemp, which is where I put all my tickets, you'll see in like April 19 in the design document is where you can find this. And I generated this out of my tablet document, like out of 2 images that I pasted into Minimax. And now I'm analyzing, like, did it understand my design just based on these 2 images? And I mean, if you're curious, you can go back. I just like explained most of how I envisioned the architecture to be. And what I'm now is I'm using my tablet to go over the document, and hopefully it generated something good out. This is the first time I try to do this. Like, hey, I'm just going to paste my scribbles from this morning in there and like see what happens. So I'm really curious. So far, first paragraph looks pretty good, and I'm always on the lookout for vocabulary, more so than like trying to imagine what the answer is. I really look at words and try to figure out where do these words come from and like what sources did it find, and is it able to just assemble words correctly? Because if it starts using words like controller, that's kind of a bad sign because controller can mean so many things. So I'd rather have it called like session controller rather than controller, because then I will say like, hey, I can also add like a glossary saying like, what is session? What does session controller mean? Because these kinds of words are important for these kinds of generic frameworks, but you have to be really careful with them because otherwise it will get very confused if there's two sessions, right? Like if there's like an HTTP session and if there's like an agent session, that causes models pretty easily. So here I'm looking for words that I never used because those will be coming from the training corpus. And they will indicate if it's a word that fits the domain, it means that it has mapped my image to the right domain, right? If it started using words from web frameworks, I'll be like, I don't want to build a web framework. I'm building a streaming text framework, right? Yeah, I don't. So there's someone on YouTube, TBH Sai, who says better to optimize the token limits. Claude became incredibly stupid out of they achieve max revenue from retailers. I don't know what the fuck Anthropic is doing. I was never a fan of Claude Code. I was able to work reasonably well with Sonnet and Opus and Pi, but then they blocked the usage of the plan. In Claude Code, I literally can't do shit. Like every time I do something in Claude Code, it's wrong. So I'm not sure. Well, and when the code leak came out, I was like, oh, they don't know either because it's such a big pile of slop. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of an OpenAI fan, but I've gone back to small models. I've been playing with Kimi 2.5, which is fantastic. Minimax 2.7 and GLM 5.1. So Andrew, the general LLM event streaming idea, it's I can go back to it later because if I explain it again, I've spent like an hour explaining it right now. I'll never make progress on this, but it's the idea is that the backend that does LLM inference is going to be streaming real-time stuff to the front end, right? Like if you have a chat application and it's real-time, it's because it receives like a lot of Delta streaming events and like thinking Delta streaming events, like tool call events. And I want to make it more generic, right? Like if you have an agent orchestration background, yeah, SSE, or in my case, I'm going to use WebSocket. So that we'll see. For example, like did it understand that I want WebSocket? Because the only part where it sees the WebSocket part is you'll see. So I'm really curious about that. If you look at this, fuck, I'm going to go back here. So I gave it this diagram without the colors, and the only part where it says WebSocket is right here. Right? So I'm curious to see, will it understand that I do want to have WebSockets? It's possible that I also mentioned it on the second side. Yeah, see, I mentioned WebSocket over here. So I'm curious to see, like, is it able to handwriting? Is it able to recognize that I said WebSocket on here? No, well, yeah, Mr. I'm French, and Le Chat is a comic book from like a Belgian comic book that it was pretty popular when I grew up. So yeah, I know Mistral has the same name, but for me, it's like going to be this dude. uh, so yeah, I'm annoyed that Mistral has it, but oh yeah, TBH Sai, sorry, I'm talking to Andrew who's on Twitch, so I'm streaming both on Twitch and on YouTube. I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but at least I have 2 viewers now. So sorry. So I'll get back to the document now because otherwise we'll never get to actually writing code. But really, this part is actually the real work, right? Like this to me is what I do most of the day is like going through these documents and reviewing them and writing my thoughts and doing some analysis. I should have asked it to do quotes from the original part. So one thing I wanted to do is use different models to do the same kind of analysis. So let's try that. I'm going to use Claude Code, which I probably going to have to log in. And I'm going to use Haiku, actually. I'm going to say create a new, actually, I'm going to just paste the same stuff I did over here. I'm going to paste this. I wonder if the image still exists. Yeah, it's going to ask me to log in. I knew it. Let's do that real quick. And let me just see, is this image still there? File, temp, pi, clipboard. I don't see an image attached. Could you upload the image? Oh, it didn't even copy paste it. That's so weird. Pi, clipboard. So it still has both images. No, why does it not like put in the... That is so weird. Is it like a rich link? That could be interesting. Andrew, I'm using Haiku or just to see the capabilities. See, it was not able to read the skill. What the fuck? Well, we'll see what happens. Like this is, for example, I'm running Claude in a sandbox because I don't, I don't trust it. But the sandbox is not able to make Claude JSON read write, and so it's interesting that it tries to write to it when I do a skill. Yeah, it's ready at event streaming LLM framework. This is so weird that it needs .claude.json to do this. So this is the analysis. It went really fast. It's pretty short. Yeah, this is useless. Collectors audio audit units. Yeah, so this is Haiku, not useful. Let me do the same with Sonnet. Shit. Oh my god, you cannot. I hate Cloud Code so much because you can't do it. Just behaves so weirdly just from a UI perspective already, um, which always irritates me. Like you can't cancel stuff and then go back. Like I don't know. All right. So let's see. This is Opus without a sandbox, so it should be able to load the skills. I'm worried that it's going to read the file that's already in here. Yes, 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 yes. I think Minimax is probably a really good choice for this kind of work. And a friend has told me that the visual recognition of Minimax is quite fantastic, the person that I trust. And so I'm curious about that. So we'll see. So we're doing the analysis. In the meantime, I'm going to continue reading my Minimax stuff because I really won't finish otherwise. And I can't talk at the same time where I do this because it disables my brain. I don't know why. Okay, this is all wrong. It kind of used certain words and then it brought up like none of the storage that I'm caring about is like tool memory RAG. So what it kind of did is I don't know how well it understood the image, but it took the text that I input, which says event streaming LLM applications, and then it did like the standard design for it. So this this is not good. I do have to do it by hand. This was an experiment. I might have to describe things a little bit more in detail. Yeah, because none of this, that's totally not what I want to build. So um, that's what I expected, that it would do something like this. It would like latch on to one word that I said and then like kind of try to make stuff up. One thing that is interesting here is that um, it did recognize that there were architecture diagrams, and I think it just made up all the rest. Yeah. So this really didn't understand much. At least Haiku tried to. Right? Like you could see some transcription and then like some misspelled words because my handwriting is horrible. But so that was so I wrote an article about this not being upset by it failing, right? Like I could be frustrated, be like, hey, why don't you understand my diagram? Like, no, read this or do no, this was a failure, basically. I tried to write a program, then I compiled it, basically, and then I was like, my program's wrong. And then in this case, I'm just like, I'm gonna start from scratch because I know I'm doing some engineering, basically, right? Like I have a failure and I'm analyzing the failure, realize that this totally doesn't describe anything about the diagram that I pasted, except just the fact that it's a diagram. But that's literally the only thing I gave it. I don't even know if it looked at the images at all, or if it just used my input text. And I suspect that it might have not even looked at any of the images. So I could go in and like say, ask it, one follow-up maybe that I can give is transcribe this image, describe the diagram, transcribe the text on the second image, just to test, like, do you even see the image, or are you just like making up that you're seeing an image? Because that could very well be as well. See, it's making stuff up that's like totally not on the image at all. Like, I don't know where this is coming from, but that's like totally not what's on the second image. On the second image, there's this. So in this case, like, I don't know what this is. I'm just gonna try to do it again and just say like describe and transcribe the text on this image. Is this even seeing images? Understand image, which is a different tool call. So I think this is oh yeah, I should have add make no mistakes. So this is much better. Look at that. This one actually transcribed the text on the image. So understand image, the function call, actually worked. So I'm going to retry all of this. And I'm going to tell it to use, right? So it says building blocks, backend layer, for example, LLM chat, backend event schemas. So it is able to read my handwriting just fine. That's awesome. But I did have to do, some engineering. The LLM made a mistake. And then instead of being like, fuck this, or assuming that it's not lying to me, I'm just like, I think, I just don't treat it as something that is talking to me. I'm just saying, like, based on the words that you returned, I think you didn't see the images at all, because none of the words that you're using are in the original text. But now, see, it says WebSocket. So all of these words that I used are now in here, which is awesome, because it means now do this image. Now I know it's primed on the tool call, understand image. I'm going to do this for the second image. It's going to do it. And so maybe now I can create a skill that says, when you are asked to analyze diagrams, use understand image, then transcribe the image and describe it first, then write a document, right? So top paragraphs, blah, blah, blah. It's actually able to really understand my like shitty handwriting. That's crazy. It's basically real-time WebSocket structured widget event handling plus hydration with one side. Just, this is awesome. Because it means that even if I'm not writing code, I can just like go through my journal and like kind of analyze this shit that I'm writing in here. This is awesome. Okay, so this was worth going back to, right? And then it says like error level, do something conf ID. Let me hide this this second layer here. So it's able to say like there's a box src with 3 shaded squares. Below squares, no need for persistent connection. Like this is really good. I'm actually impressed. I'm really impressed. Second diagrams, queues, SRV, proc, clients, 3 queue boxes, SRV dispatch, map to conf, database cylinder. So I'm starting to see how it analyzes my diagrams. So maybe next time I'll draw my diagrams a little bit differently, right? Conf, but clients, also backend. Like this is not very clear, but actually it's able to read this stuff. That's crazy. Conf, but clients, also backend. That is fantastic. Cylinder labeled hydration with arrows from proc area. It's this one here. So it has spatial understanding of the diagram as well. This is really good. CMPS carried through. That I have no idea what that means. Bottom annotation. I don't see that. Does it mention state machines? Cancellation multiplex, conf multiplexing, conf creation hydrations. That's these here. That's wild. Bottom right, cylinder labeled hydration. It has state machine here. Proc clouds. It sees that they're clouds. This is really interesting. So scraper source, however, that's wrong. It's not a scraper. So SRC was not a good name to use here. So I'll know because it's apparently really good at interpreting the diagrams. Means I just have to now be careful about the words that I put into diagrams and like maybe decompose them into smaller little blocks. I'm really curious to see what Opus is going to do, but Opus, I think you see it starting to read like a little bit too many files here. It's reading the source code, it's reading the README. It's going to not look at the images, it's going to look at all kinds of shit. And so maybe I have to tell it to not do that. See, it's reading like this document. I'm going to interrupt that and then say, I'm going to rewind it actually. I'm going to, oh my God, how do I cancel this stuff? Okay. So here it's like, don't look at any other documents than just these 2 images. This is clean room stuff. Maybe that will help. I don't know. But I'm actually really impressed by this guy. I'm really impressed. And now what I'm going to say is actually the original text, right? Like transcribe this image. So based on these images and the transcriptions, one error, scraper source, actually the base layer backend that does the actual LLM work. All right, so write a architecture analysis doc and upload to Remarkable. And so we're going to do it again. It's like, don't look at any existing files. We're going to try it again. Alistair, I don't know. I mean, they're probabilistic models, so they're new technologies as well. Like, it's like a constant discovery. I don't know if this is the state of things or if it's just the way you have to work with these. I don't see the image content in my context, so here you go again. Let's see. But yeah, Cloud Code, I have no idea what it does. It's just very opaque. Not the LLM part, just like the harness part is very opaque to me. I don't know what the system prompt does. I don't know what kind of magic they insert. Pi is a very minimal one. Pi has like a 1 sentence system prompt and like 4 tools. So that's to me much more useful because I can do some more proper engineering. But really, like the real work that I'm doing is still this like writing on paper and doing like the thinking, just the way it always was. Um, what I'm using the LLMs for is now doing the tedious part where I'm like, I kind of have 90% of the thing in my head. There's maybe 10% that I haven't really designed out, but I have implemented enough of these systems in the past that it's hopefully going to be able to map this new architecture, understand in quotes the diagrams to be able to do a clean document that I hopefully won't have to edit very much. And I think of it in like multiple steps, right? It's like the way I think about what I'm doing right now is actually let me choose this. So I did some thinking, right? And I put this into a diagram. So traditional thinking. I put this into a diagram. On the other hand, I have from the past lots of code. That works. That's in production, right? Past code. I have many web chat applications that I've written. I'm just like not happy with the state they got to. I want to, and also every time I want to make a new chat application, I really don't want to spend more than 2 seconds saying I want a chat application. Do you want to proceed? Yes. Is it reading any other documents? That I'm curious about. Like, is it going to follow my instructions at all? Because in the past, it would like, see, this little fucker is like, I told it not to read any other documents. And then the first thing it does is like, yeah, let me read some other documents. Yeah, dude, I don't know. Didn't I tell it don't look at other documents and these 2 images is clean room stuff? And then, oh, actually, these are files that it created, I think. Okay, so I'm being a little bit too aggressive here. So what I'm doing here, I've got my diagrams plus, design, got my architecture kind of. What I'm going to use the LLM for now is, so this is the LLM. I'm going to use that to create a clean design document, right? And so this one, I'm going to read it, right? I'm going to read it carefully. And I put this on my little tablet, which I'm drawing this on. Once I read it, I might iterate a little bit, right? I might say like, no, I don't want this. No, maybe I should do this. And then the next LLM step is going to be take this source code plus take this document. Oops. I'm going to draw this a little bit like a DSP diagram plus. And then I'm going to say, make an implementation plan, right? Or make an architecture, like a concrete architecture. Because now it will say like, well, there's old code that maybe I can reuse. There's maybe stuff that I need to add. Maybe we should organize a package like this. I hope that it will find all these kind of like coding style and coding guidelines from my past projects. And it's going to weave all of this together into a concrete architecture document, which I will then, again, read on my tablet carefully. Tablet. So I'm going to read it, going to go back and forth with it. And then I'm sad that this is not an infinite canvas, but we'll have to do. The next step then is just take this document and create a task list in different phases. So, because I think this is too much for a one shot. So I'm splitting it into multiple phases with tasks, and potentially for each phase, make a separate implementation document. And so this one I will review again, right? Like review cycle, review was like a little dude on the tablet. And then I'm going to say build. So if you look at the number of LLM steps that are in here, hopefully I don't need to do a correction, right? So this would be step number 1. Then maybe step 1A. I hope not. Step 2, maybe 2A. I don't want it to be more than 2A, 2B. If I have to correct it twice, I'm like, I fucked something up before there's something that's not clear, and I'll probably just unwind and go back. We'll see. And then hopefully this is step 3, maybe 3A. And then the next one is just going to be 4. So I hope that I have to do 4 steps today. I don't want to spend more time chatting with this. So I really consider these agent screens here as a compiler more than a chat. Like I don't want to do back and forth and like launch 16 things and whatever. I want to be like 1, 2, 3, 4 done. And if I have to wait 20 minutes, then that's fine, right? So this one here over here has created a new document, which is the analysis v2. So I'm going to shut up a bit and then do some review on this one to see does it this time have come up with something that actually is close to what I wanted. And as I said before, if I talk at the same time, it's not going to go right. This is much closer to what I want, right, than what it came before. It has the 3 layers that are in the diagram. And despite me not writing this up as such, it's actually pretty clearly mirroring what I want. There's like a session, right? The word session is in here. There's the word structured event. There's commands, start, stop, inference. Like here, maybe I should have ... There's hydration and timeline state. Those are all the concept that I'm building my architecture around. And the fact that it's like bringing those up in the summary is really encouraging. And if you compare it to the previous document that we had, right, this one is completely generic and actually doesn't mean very much, right? If we go back to the executive summary, a layered architecture spanning from raw streaming to agentic decision-making, which I never mentioned anywhere, right? With a central event broker enabling loose coupling. Like all of these were basically just, I had already spotted, like I'm not using loose coupling as a word and I'm not using downstream. Those are not words that I use. So I said, oh, that's a good insight, but actually it's just like generic training corpus stuff. So right from the get-go in the first paragraph, I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. It like kind of got it, but then the rest is just blah, blah, blah. And I was probably talking at the time and I missed these. If I had seen these right from the beginning, I would have been like, nope, it's wrong. So I missed these. That's why when I'm talking, I miss these kinds of words. If I had been by myself, I would have immediately in the first sentence noticed, no, this is not what I wanted. This is wrong. And that's why I'm not doing this on screen, because like, even if I'm not on stream in daily life, I really step away from the computer, because otherwise I'm just, if I look at this stuff and I'm like kind of scrolling through, I'll be like, yeah, this looks great. Like this is perfect. It's perfect. It says like structured event framework, perfect. And we'll miss the fact that it says tool orchestration, even though I never mentioned tools anywhere. And that's a big red flag, right? Like if it brings up concepts you've never mentioned, you're like, this is not good. Or you can like say, this is clearly addition from the training corpus that I cared about. So that's why I'm gonna shut up a little bit more and see if I this time I don't miss something. I'm gonna try something. Make update the document by adding markdown citations for every statement by giving the reason why you wrote it and the original source. Say, I wrote X because I found Y in the diagram and it says Z. That way I can trace your thinking. Upload the updated document to the tablet as a new copy. I forgot to put this in. I'm curious to see what it's going to add. Obviously, this is past. It's like post hoc. Oh, it doesn't have the image anymore. Let me see. Let me add the images again. Here they are. Obviously, this is after the fact, so it has already written the document, so it's going to make stuff that is going to match the document. But hopefully, this will still tell me some information, especially because the context window is still here before, right? So hopefully, this will give me some insight. I should have said it on the first pass because then it would have been much more closely intermixed, right? Like, because now when I'm going to ask it to write the explanation here for this, it will actually already know the rest of the document that comes afterwards. But if I had asked it to do it up front, it wouldn't yet know what it's going to write. And so the explanation that it puts in is going to influence the thing it's going to write, right? Because these things don't think. There's like not a base thinking layer that is at the core of it, and then the rest is derived. No, this is whatever it's going to say now is going to be influenced by the previous stuff that it said, and there's going to be deeper layers, that encode certain patterns and stuff, but it's still going to. That's why it lies, right? It will say like, "Oh, I think the image is X Y Z," even if it hasn't seen it, and then afterwards it's just going to assume that it saw an image, right? Like it's not. So that's why LLMs like quote unquote lie is that they will like post rationalize whatever they said earlier, but it still can be useful, right? So that's why I said it. I'm like curious to see what it does. And now we also have like the opus analysis. I'm really curious about the opus analysis, and maybe I should put the same thing in here. Um, so I'm gonna prompt it with the same thing, and then see what happens. All right, back to review. All right, so I'm going to explain the notes that I did, and this time I know that I went through it in its entirety. So the problem that I'm trying to solve, right? Like I talked about it quite a bit on stream. It's going to be interesting to take the transcript of the stream and like, post analyze this. The problem that I'm trying to solve is indeed WebSocket connection management and lifecycle is complicated. Session creation, tracking, cleanup is complicated. Event schema definitions for both backend and UI is also something I kept having to redo and redo. Hydration of UI state from, and this is where my first kind of tingly sense comes up, from persisted conversation data. And so before I had already written, does it match conversations to like the session word here? Does it match it to conversation? Because so the separation between conversation and session is something that I've been struggling with in the past already quite a bit, because you start with a conversation, but then often in an agent systems, it's not a conversation. It's more like a session kind of thing with multiple conversations going on, like that kind of stuff. So I was using the word conv here, right? And like there's conv ID over here. But then later on, I'm going to use the word session, right? So here I used session, and I don't think it's really making the connection that actually conversations are sessions. And that can be really problematic down the road. So that's why I put a little square in here. Square stuff is to make a note that, okay, this is not just like me scribbling stuff. It's like, this is something I need to go back to and clarify. I need to make sure that sessions and conversations are the same thing, and that we should use the word session and not conversation. And then hydration of UI state, I should make sure that UI state is actually coupled to timeline entities. And this also is very important to say that everything in the UI is going to be modeled by an entity as a single unit of something that gets stored. It can still mean that an entity is like represented by multiple widgets and all of that, but it's like, it's something that has appeared at some point in time and then gets like updated as time progresses, if that makes sense. And the fact that it said UI state and then on the other one timeline entity, even though for me they're the same, that's also something that I need to clarify, because I'm sure it will make two files for this. It will make two abstraction in the code when it should actually be making one. And that's going to be downstream from there. Everything's going to go down the drain, right? It's a subtle distinction. So I'm not going to go back and like do it in my first prompt and do it all again. This is something that's fairly easy to correct, but it's also subtle. And I wouldn't have expected any model or even a person to really understand this. It just means that I wasn't clear enough in my writing. And probably, I was aware of this when I was writing this, right? And the I should have probably, because I was aware of it when I was writing this. I was like, I should be like clear about this. I should, maybe the next time I do this, because it's apparently really good at recognizing my handwriting, I should have just done this, right? Like UI state equal to timeline entities, or maybe written like a little paragraph about it. Or as TBH Sai said before on YouTube was, maybe I should use voice for that, because that stuff I like talking about, right? Like once I've written this out in my sketchbook, I can talk about it pretty easily. So that's why I was experimenting with the diagram today. Is like, I think this is it's a really interesting technique. And I tried it in the past, like a year ago or two, and the visual models were just like not good. Like they couldn't recognize my handwriting. We saw that Haiku kind of made a mess out of my handwriting. So I'm really curious to see what Opus does. It's really interesting that like Anthropic's Haiku apparently doesn't have the quality of Minimax's understand image MCP. Very interesting, honestly. Also, what you can see, this cost me 25 cents. for already multiple tours. Like I'm sure this is already at like 100,000 tokens of Opus. This is, I think, not cheap. I don't know how much 100,000 tokens of Opus is, but I think it's 25 cents. So anyway, let's continue. Now we have the with traces document, so maybe we can go there and just see if this confirms my things, my thinking. So if you remember, the first one I was pretty happy about, and then now it says, I wrote this because in the building blocks diagram, I see 3 top level bullet points clearly labeled: backend layer, generic layer, and client layer. Good. They're presented as sibling categories, not nested. So I inferred they're equal pairs in the architecture. This is, I'm really, really impressed. I'm glad that I decided to do this experiment today. Right, because should I do more experiments? You know what? I'm going to do more experiments. Since we already have good documents here, and I can always resume the sessions, I'm going to make a new session. I'm going to put in, let's create a new event streaming thing, describe this image. I'm going to paste the 2 images. Let's create a new okay, and then comes the second part, which is, it's not update the document, it's in the document add markdown citations. I don't know what the white space is, all destroyed. By giving the reason why you wrote why you wrote what you wrote. I don't know if that's important. And the original source, I wrote X because that way I can trace your thinking, update. So I'm starting from scratch, and what I'm doing here as an experiment is see how different is the result going to be, especially as I go further when I ask it to do this reinforcing grounding in the image at every step, right? So this is what I call prompt engineering. It's like I have a theory and I'm going to put the theory to test by running a certain task, or I have like something in mind that I want to. In this case, it's like experiment. Don't call it engineering, call it science, like whatever. I have a certain theory that I haven't explained right now, but I have a certain theory that this, the theory that I have that I want to test out is in this document, which doesn't have the thinking traces, and it's starting to already have these little squares where it's starting to diverge from what I meant, that this divergence is going to get stronger and stronger, and that having it grounded will hopefully keep things a little bit tighter as I go forward. And then once this part is finished, it's also really fast, as you can see. It's already like starting to write. The third experiment that I'm going to run is I'm going to clarify these 2 squares already right in the first prompt to see, oh, now that I've told it that and how to interpret it, and maybe I'll go forward a little bit in my review and hopefully, well, we'll see how many squares I find, right? So now I'm going to shut up again and do some thinking. And you can see how much time, I mean, here I'm talking a lot, but you can see how carefully I go through these documents usually, right? At some point I'll go faster, but this is a really crucial document, and I'll probably spend I'll probably spend an hour on it, right? An hour during which my agents are doing nothing. And I don't care. That's cool. 25 cents. And what this allows me to do is really solidify the problem for me too, right? It's like I'll see all the things that are unclear. I'll maybe have to rethink things where I'm like, oh, that's actually something I didn't think about. I'll refine the way I formulate the problem. I think that part is really, really useful when you're, and something I really we're missing as an industry, right? Is like all this like kind of throwing more and more agents that do code review and stuff, but like agents will, like LLMs will like do weird stuff right at the beginning. And if you don't catch it very carefully at the beginning, you can do as many reviews as you want. It's just going to get worse and worse. And I just don't understand what people are doing with so many tokens. It's like the more I work with the big ass models that we have these days, and the more time I spend just completely away from the computer. Um, and I think that's really, really, really important. And also, what's really, really good about LLMs is that I don't have to open my editor and spend like 15 hours breaking my brain just to try out one idea and dilute the ideas. Like now I can do some concentrated thinking all the time, right? I'm going to do some review, hopefully maybe find squares, and then I'll go back and do a third inference on this one, or fourth in this case. Also, we have the opus one, so 5. The sixth one, which was haiku, we decided already was like not good. See, session and conversation, it separates them, even though it should just say session management. So, I mean, I already made a square for this, but I'm just going to put it here. I knew this was going to diverge. So this is good, and I think this was something that it saw in the diagram as well, is like the signature for command callbacks. And I think this was really messy in the way I wrote it. Let me see, where is it? Yeah, see that? So that's really cool as well. It's like it knows that I write code if I do, like code syntaxy stuff here. So that's also really good to know that I can start writing code in my scribbles. Like I can sketch out APIs. I don't know what a conversation entity is. Is its timeline entity. These are the same. Like the creation word I knew was a bad idea. I knew this was a bad idea. I actually wonder if it's going to be able to interpret this stuff here. That's going to be interesting. Oh, see, I skipped over this. I didn't even realize I skipped over this. It's very easy for me to skip stuff if I talk in the middle. All right, so doesn't turn into 1 hour of silence. Let me go back to what I wrote here. So I already talked about the session and conversation being two conflicting concepts that actually should be merged. So I put this in here. So for people who are joining, I'm building like a web framework. And after an initial analysis of images by the LLM, I'm now going over the first implementation document. And I'm going over it very, very carefully on my tablet. And everything that's a square is something that I need to clarify, because I know if I don't clarify it, the model is going to do the wrong thing. So these initial steps are really, really important. In this case, because I'm doing a pretty complex framework, right? Like if I had some more menial tasks, I would just be like, yeah, whatever. Um, but here, I really need to make sure that every concept, every layer, every relationship between layers is like very clearly explained, so that as we go forward, models going to be referring or finding this information over and over uh, are pulled back onto the right track, right? Like they will probably find stuff that is conflicting over time as the code base grows. And so if there's a very clear central document that is always going to pull back the strings into a right understanding, then that's going to, that's going to make like a something really robust that will just withhold LLM programming over time. If I don't do it, and especially if this central document is actually making the agents diverge by using conflicting words or unclear patterns, that will just like increase over time, because parts of it will be so strong in their divergence that they will become real thing as far as the LLM is concerned, even though I never wanted them to be a real thing. So that's why I'm really being really, really careful here. And so, for example, one thing that I noted here was circled this on command, even though it's really nice that it found code, this is not my coding style. And I'm worried that this might influence things a little bit too much, because on command is not the right thing. I think it's more like it should define a command, right? Like should be definition, not callback. Because the on underscore is like uh is very strongly reminiscent of callback syntax, right? So that's also something where I have to read a little bit between the lines and say like, no, we don't want callbacks. We want definitions. And I made the same comment in here, like run event processors is not the right name. I want to define event processors, but the running of these event processors isn't a generic layer. So this one is also really important. It's should be run, because if I say run, it's going to build something that runs event processors in the backend, which is not really not what I want. But it's also the diagram we used to do this doesn't really explain this, right? Like it has the processors here, which are these guys. It doesn't say that they're running inside the the generic layer. Nothing here says that this is the generic layer, even though I knew it, right? But knowing now that it has such a good understanding of spatial relationships, because it was able to understand where each arrow points to and which little parts are grouped, the next time I do this kind of prompting through a diagram, I will put in boundaries like this, right? Like this is awesome. If I can say like, hey, this is the generic layer, that is awesome, because it means I can really like draw my architecture instead of having to use many words to kind of describe it. So, depending on how far I get and how good this ends up being or not, I will actually give this a try, where I will go back. If I realize that it's too much effort to get it to do a proper implementation guide or implement design document, I will actually go back and make some clean diagrams, and then see how far that goes, right? Or maybe do some like copy pasting of parts of diagrams and writing some text next to it, maybe sketching out some APIs. Because the process of doing this, where I review documents, ask them to modify the document a little bit, that's also very good for me to understand what I'm building, because I will get like pushback and reviews. I'm not asking the model to review stuff because I don't think that's like a very good prompting technique necessarily. It's more like the feedback of a compiler in a sense, right? It's like, well, I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. Um, uh, anyway, I find this awesome that it understands diagram. For me, is awesome because that's how I program, right? It's like, uh, um, it's how I've been programming since I was a kid. Is like doing these kinds of things. So if now I can really like put this, because a year ago this wasn't possible. I try it like from time to time. And a friend told me like Minimax is really good at spatial understanding and visual understanding. It's like, hey, yeah, this is actually true. It looks really, really good. Um, so, for example, this is an idea for something I want to build. Now that I know, hey, this is actually almost something you can prompt the LLM with. Um, that's awesome. I mean, this is still too complex and there's too many things, but knowing that, hey, if you take this while you're in this like creative mode of drawing things, which to me is really important in my kind of like thinking workflow, creative workflow, and I can stay in that mode and then get a clean document out of it. That is absolutely awesome. I just like I'm really hype actually. All right. And then I'll play with colors and like different notation things, like things I've been doing since forever, right? Like I try to find some old documents here. I think I had like a page with like sketchbooks. Yeah, these were like my old programming sketchbooks from like forever ago. Let me see. This is like 2010 or something. Really fucking old. Let me see. These what a fucking mess. Uh, and then I like doodling in between, like when I'm like a little bit bored or so. It's like a very calming thing. And then at the same time, where I'm like drawing or painting, I'm still thinking about the thing on the left. So yeah, see this kind of like, so the colors have a really strong meaning here. Everything's like kind of codified, right? Like the color green is actually mapped to this. I don't know what this was. I think this was like some timing, like some NXKB was a laser board. I don't know what this was. But this has always been like how I build like state machines, and then the colors always have like a very formal meaning, right? It's like I think a yellow node um, was like a callback dispatcher, and then like the greens are like states, and then the arrows which are not colored here, like there's little notations. If every time it says plus, it's like emitting an event, I think, or like maybe there's like a little arrow that goes up. Like there's just like tons of stuff like this, which is then afterwards, that's why I'm so excited about LLMs, right? Is like this has always been where my real programming has happened, and then I had to sit down in front of a computer and just like fucking type it down. And the only thing that could happen is like it breaking. So now, right, like all of this stuff, if it has spatial understanding, this is like awesome. Actually, let me try this out. If I take a screenshot of this and I go, let me go here. No, actually, I think I started doing a thing for like experiments. Did I do this? Experiments? What is experiments? Hegelian discourse. Let me make dear 2026-0419 visual understanding mini max. How do I save an image? That's something with the transcript. It doesn't save the images, so I'll have to be careful about that. Where I actually have to put them in here. Write a detailed description analysis guide to this image. We'll see. Save as detailed markdown document. I'll just see what happens, because I think iCat is the thing that clips this. Yeah. Obviously, it has no idea of knowing what this is about, but I'm curious to see. Is it going to recognize what is it going to say this is? What is it going to say this is? How does it going to explain this? Will it describe this little doodle over here? Like, can I give the model doodles, or will it like distract it? Like all of these kinds of experiments I'm really curious about. And then let me go see some other ones that I had. Yeah, let me take this as well to see what it does with the paintings. Um, so this, I have to find something better to to save images. All right, done. Created this. Now the same with. This is cool. Like 1 cent. 1 cent. That is awesome. Actually, let me use that for. Can this do sub agents? Because this takes. Yeah, whatever. Another day. If it's able to transcribe stuff that well, I'm gonna put some full books in here, which have a lot of diagrams, which like before were always a pain to transcribe, because it got the diagrams wrong. All right, let's go back to this. So if we go back to my document here, other things I noticed, so session conversation were something, on command we went over, UI state and timeline entity are the same, and conversation entities is not a thing. I don't know where it found this. Session conversation is also this. Like the stale connection and tick heartbeat, I think those are the same. I'm not really, that's why I wrote it. I'm not really confident about patterns to do stale detection. So usually I put a square with a question mark, which is a sign that I should go do some research about this, right? So it's like patterns, design patterns to detect stale WebSocket connections and also stale LLM inferences to avoid, say, being stuck in thinking ... in a web chat application. Because here, I don't really, I know you can do heartbeats, but I don't know if it's an area I just don't feel comfortable being like, oh, I have the right solution. I know it's a hard area, right? Because like could very well be that, especially if we do event driven, um, let me do this. What if the LLM inference events are sent in an event driven queue so that I don't even have a TCP connection? How do I detect staleness then? That's the thing where I'm not confident, is like if we go back to the architecture here, if we go back to the architecture, this is event driven over Redis because I want to have like multiplexing and stuff like that. Right, where if I have an agent backend system that's going to start like a background job on a different computer, that's still like part of the session, and I want the events from this like background compute thing to go back into the session. So it's going to be like async, and then event driven stuff with like a Redis event bus or something is like a pretty nice pattern. So how to do this, I'm like not really sure about, and so that's why I'm starting a ChatGPT research, and it's going to give me stuff which is, I'm not going to want to assimilate all that knowledge and also, because there's going to be a lot of this, um, of stuff that I'm just like not too sure about and might actually have some really consequential results down the road, which is how you learn, is that you do something and then it fails and then you're like, oh, I learned my lesson and next time I'm going to do it better. I learned my lesson in the past and I don't remember what the right patterns were to do this. So especially things like SQS. Um, that's actually exactly the system I was it was like 10 years ago. I think we were doing stuff with sending telemetry from printers to like print jobs if they were still going or not. And like, this is the print job stale was like something that I fought with quite a bit. So I'm a little bit annoyed that I didn't find Redis. I should have mentioned Redis. Yeah, because it's job liveness detection. So those are the kind of things where I'm like, I know this is a hard problem. I know it's been solved before. I know there's probably some good either libraries or just design patterns. And then once I have the name of the design pattern that solves a certain issue, and I understand that it integrates well within the thing that I'm building, then I can just put that keyword into the LLM, and then probably the good thing will happen, right? But you do have to have a pretty deep understanding of what these things are, um, to make sure that they actually integrate well into your overall architecture. And um, in a way, what I like also about LLMs is that I can acquire. Oh, see, I said Redis streams. That's great. I was hoping that it would say that because I know Sequus and Kafka have like different semantics, and Postgres-based job queues also have different semantics. I understand the semantics of Redis streams reasonably well. I was pretty well versed in Sequus. I don't know if you call it Sequus, SQS, back in the days, but I forgot about it. Because SQS, you have to like connect and then you have to poll at certain intervals. And yeah, I'm not going to go into that. So anyway, this has been a minute. So what I'm going to do now, and this is a technique that I've been playing with recently that's awesome. I love this shit. I'm going to go here. I'm going to do this. Stale connection. I'm going to make a new repo. Git init, doc manager init, git add dot, initial commit. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to paste these two researchers from ChatGPT, right? Actually, I'm going to put them in a file. Stale connection ChatGPT MD. I'm going to put this in here. And then the second question was this. And I probably should, I'm not going to put my prompts in here. I'm going to say create a new doc manager to create an interactive playground based textbook about stale connection detection with Redis. The playground should be testing the real thing. Front end in JS, back end in Go, Redis in Docker Compose, so that I can validate the real thing. Keep a diary as you work. Start with a detailed implementation guide and table of contents for the textbook. Think about learning through interaction, say Brett Victor or Seymour Papert, which are like people who talk about this kind of interactive thing. Then add tasks, then implement and write out the different parts in a textbook style, explaining all the fundamentals for a computer science student. We'll see. I'm experimenting with the prompts to be done here. I'm going to use Minimax. We'll see what happens. Oh, I just said like read source. I'm just going to say continue as a next prompt. So creating a ticket, right? It's going to add a few tasks. So it's going to do create the detailed textbook talk and implementation guide as the first task. Here again, the autoregressive nature is it's going to write the table of contents, and then it's going to write the Go backend. So that means the Go backend will actually match the textbook content. If you had done the Go backend first, which is probably going to be, if I just ask it to do it first, it's probably going to be fairly simplistic. Then the textbook is going to be fairly simplistic. If I, however, do a detailed textbook first, then the Go backend is probably going to be pretty complex to cover all these like playground cases that I want to have, and then is going to build all this. So we'll see. It's already writing the make file. Like, what the fuck? So it's writing the, see, what I was afraid of is like write the design. Did it actually write the design guide? Oh, it did. 500, man, it's fucking fast today. So it did write the textbook. Upload the textbook doc to Remarkable, then continue. Oh man, it's like fast as fuck. And we're at 7 cents, which is awesome. So now it's uploading, like I wrote this little tool to upload that stuff to my tablet. And to go back to this document here, the review that I do, right? It's like every time I put like a little square with a question mark here, I will do this, and then I will write up a report for my Obsidian Vault as well. And that way, as I build more and more stuff, I'm going to have all this growing set of not just documents that explain things, but also like already interactive code that I've played with that I know works, that I can reuse as little as my little toolbox, right? And then I don't know if I told it to write a diary. What is this? Oh, this is a different playground that I was working on. So, hey man, it's way too fast. We're at like what, 20 cents? 10 cents. This is quite impressive. I don't know when it says working, if it's actually doing a thinking stream. I think it's doing a thinking stream and like Pi doesn't show it to me. So now it's doing the textbook chapters. The textbook should be interactive with potentially custom widgets for each chapter topic. That maybe I should have said. I'm not sure about the prompting for this kind of work. I'm still experimenting with it, and then I'll make a skill for it, and maybe like a kind of like a React toolbox as well. All right, so what are the topics here? Why connections go stale, Redis connection model, this is cool, diagnostics, 3 clocks, heartbeats, pub sub, streams, leasing, and so on. All right, this is awesome because those are all topics that I, like kind of vaguely know about. And now I'm going to have basically an interactive textbook for forever. Like every time I want this topic again, I'll be able to play with a real Redis queue, run stuff, run it in tmux to make it easier to deal with, use port 3030. So now it's doing a widget registry. Cool too. Where it's 20 cents. Oof. I'm going to have to take a break at some point. So continuing the review, I said like, this is a topic that I'm not sure about, is the little thing that I marked with a question mark over here. Then the out of scope, I made a note like authentication and authorization is something that I completely forgot. And where I'm like, this might be worth adding into the main framework. I think authentication and authorization is something that probably should be built in the generic thing. And I'm thinking, what if I build it without it? Will it be easy for an LLM to add post hoc, right? Like, or is this something that I should really bake into the base model right from the beginning? And I have a hunch that I should build this into the base model. I should at least go back to the drawing board and think hard about what it means to have authentication, how it's passed all the way to the backend agent, right? And the thing with authentication authorization is like LLMs love adding complex systems on top of it. Like GPT-5, for example, will always go full in, make a whole capability model, which is usually over-engineered and not really helpful. And it's also a topic that I'm not an expert in, right? Like I've built many of those, but it's not something like it's its own profession to be like good at security, right? Good at this kind of systems. So I'm also always like a little bit wary. Is like, am I going to a little bit too far out of my lane um, when I'm doing these things, or should I be going more out of my lane to do it? And so I've built many OAuth, OIDC, Pixie kind of things lately. So I'm getting better. I'm getting much better at this kind of stuff. But also, I know that I will never um, kind of be good about it. So, you know, this cost me what, like 30 cents? Um, we'll see how good the chapters are, right? Um, so it might have misunderstood the connection to Redis, right? It might have misunderstood the topic here, uh, which is interesting. So I might have to prompt it again. Um, I will prompt it again. I don't know if I should. I mean, I'm gonna keep this playground because this is pretty good. Uh, it has WebSockets in here, so you know, we'll let it stand as it is. But it's cool to see that it's starting to work already. Um, and the good thing about telling it right from the get go, use Docker Compose, use the real stuff, is that it will fail on these things, and that's important. It means that either it will fail completely, but also if it works, it means every topic in the playground, I will be able to verify against the real thing and not have the model like fake it and pretend that this is all working. Is I will be able to look at the logs of Redis. I will be able to take the commands it shows me in the textbook and try them out by myself. And it also means that the code it wrote, at least for some degree of good, works for real, right? Like it will at least compile the right libraries. It will connect to the right. It will do all of these things. It still doesn't mean that the playground's perfect and like everything works perfectly, but at least I'll be able to surface that pretty quickly because the textbook is also about all the complicated edge cases, right? And it will explain me what is complicated about this edge case and also provide me like little buttons to try it out, which doesn't mean the buttons are correct, but there's a fair chance that they are correct because they're so close to the explanation of the behavior they should have, right? Like the textbook, the fact that they wrote out the textbook, which is coming from the training corpus most probably, and I should maybe have told it to do like web searches and like, you know, link it to the documentation and link it to a textbook and all of that to make sure that they're really grounded. Then there's a high chance that the code is much more correct than if I had done it in the abstract and say like build a WebSocket connection system, right? It's like, and so suddenly I can say build a WebSocket connection system, look at the playground. I've gone through the textbook. I know that every case looks pretty good. Which is, you know, you could say like, well, you're still not sure if this code works correctly or whatever. It was like neither would have before, in the sense that I've encountered many libraries that once you get into the edge cases, like kind of crumble, right? Like even very widely used libraries that once you get into the edge cases, you're like, oh, I guess this is actually not doing the textbook thing, right? Um, so in a way, the testing I'm doing is like pretty rigorous, right? Because I before LLMs, I would never, or like I would only sometimes take the real theoretical textbook or like the real documentation and go through it one by one and see like, does our system support this? Does our system support this? Does our system support this? We would do more like user-oriented stories, or like more like, oh, this is what we want to achieve today. Let's make sure it works. Instead of the first time we build it, make sure that the fundamentals are correct, right? Like there was more the inverse. It's like, oh, we have like a prototype and a demo next week. We have to build it. Like, let's make it work. Like, oh, it looks like it works perfectly. And then 6 months later, be like, you know what? Like the stale connection thing, it's really tricky. Except now you already have like 15,000 lines of code on top of it. So suddenly handling, maybe switching the entire concurrency model is like just impossible. And you say like, well, let's live with the stale connection thing. Let's just put an error dialog on it and then call it a day. So in a way, I find this like much, much more rigorous than what I would do before. Yes. So so let's see how far this all gets. This is really cool. You can split the widget files and all that to make sure. So this was 60 cents, which I think are really well spent. And then especially on a team or with friends and stuff like that, where you can share these things. So we're working on a thing with a friend where you can easily share these things, so that not everybody has to like reprompt them over time, and also that if they do have errors, they do get corrected, right? Because they're really, really useful learning resources. It's like those things are rare because they're so expensive to do, even though they're not hard to do. They just like take a while. And the hard part in building them is not the content. Is not the actual thing that's hard in real life. It's like building a nice UI, building like nice text, building like nice widgets. All of these things are the time consuming and actually hard because it's like educational stuff. And overall, LLMs have that in their training corpus pretty well on how to do educational material. You just have to prompt it out of them. So going back to our review, and then maybe I'll stop after that. I've gotten really, really far, haven't I? I'm still at my implementation document, and I haven't even corrected it. So the other thing, so authentication authorization, I wasn't sure about. This is definitely something I should go back to the drawing board. Then LLM execution engine, that's the concept I have in mind is broader than this. And I said, maybe it knows this is more than just an LLM execution engine, and put a square, because I want to say this is really like agentic backend system. It's not just an LLM loop. It's also an agentic system. It can be all kinds of things. It could be like background jobs plus agents plus all of this that channeled into one UI. So I want to make sure that that is, because I think this is not that it's really important, because it shouldn't matter. But just maybe that might give it a little bit more context. You can see the events that it describes here are very LLM-esque. So I'm worried that it will just do things a little bit too rigidly instead of exposing them, right? So those should be pluggable, the commands. Actually, I'm gonna wait for this dude to finish, and then I'm gonna stop, because my brain's like tiring out. And then here, as I said, running event processors is really a wrong name. This is really important one. This one here, this needs to be corrected. So before I go into further all of this, what we have available is actually a document where we can see it interleaving explanations on how it interpreted the diagrams right from the get-go. And maybe I should go look at this one, because what I was looking at right here is, I think this this is all I need to correct the actual design document. Like all of these comments, even though it's just 2 pages, I don't think I need to go much further into the next layers to already have, like, I don't think it's even worth it. I already know the annotations that I have will significantly impact the follow-up. If I continue doing the review here, I'll probably just writing the same stuff over and over again. I will quickly quickly skim it just to see if there's like maybe something else to be done. This is actually pretty good. The fact that it does have command definitions. So this is session metadata schema, maybe. But yeah, I'm not, this is nice. The fact that it was able to separate these as like generic components, but I'm not entirely sure that it quote unquote understands exactly what I want. Because I already have a pretty clear picture in my head. So remember how I was very worried about the session/conversation issue? This one here. It looks like it doesn't mention conversation anymore on this part. Right? It only says session created per conversation or per user session. And this is an old session, so I'm not sure if I can go back, ask a little bit more what it thinks the difference is. Think in quotes, right? Yeah, so running the projection step is also the thing that I was worried about that it would do in the back end. It actually put it into the front end. So this is really interesting because I was worried that it would like misinterpret that, but it looks like it really got it. And the other thing I was worried is like backend to generic event transformation. It like actually calls it backend event, UI facing events, which is exactly right. Like this is one concept and this is one concept. And the fact that they're close by, instead of being like, oh, backend could, it could be misinterpreted as just a backend and then a generic event. So the fact that now we have the proximity of these words is really important. That's why I put like function signature question mark over here. Is like I'm not sure what it really associates, and associates may be a better word than understands, associates with backend. Because it could also be like backend plus generic event, right? Backend comma generic comma event. Back pressure is interesting. This is something I didn't mention. And here also, I'm like a little bit fuzzy on the algorithms that exist. So I'm putting a question mark to do a ChatGPT research. The signature on command, maybe a callback is not the worst thing either. Man, it really understood a lot from these two diagrams. I'm impressed. Not that it's like the hardest architecture in the world, or like, uncommon architecture, but it's also not the most common per se. Like understanding where backend commands are run, or like an event processor, what that is and where it needs to be run. That's like stuff that in the past I had trouble having models associate correctly. Generic hydration timeline entity, replay capability for restoring UI state, store conversation entities. So that might require some clarification. We'll see what the UI stuff, the client specification does. So yes, connection state management. Yeah, I don't think it needs to mention that specifically. It should say connections can send commands back, and like state changes should just be. I don't think the backend really needs to know that, and I don't want like a parallel kind of event. I want events to be synchronous. So synchronous is actually a good word to mention here. So I'm putting a little box next to it so that I remember to go to it. Because then I can check off the boxes and say like, oh, I put this into my conversation. Take heartbeat. See, so it made 2 sections for the stale connection and heartbeat, and I think those are like kind of right, like progress updates, latency probing, keep alive. I only want the tick heartbeats to be for only for staleness. So this is a nice way of writing it up because I can already tell these two go together, right? Connection state, hydration storage, pluggable command framework, event processing pipeline, session objects, WebSocket handling. WebSocket handling is the same as connection state management because it says backend side control. Backend side control. All right, so here something is weird. I think this can probably be removed. This is event driven. See, the word event driven is also something that I forgot to mention. If I had put it onto my diagram very easily, I could like probably just have put in Redis here, and then all of this wouldn't have happened. So I have to remember to be more precise in my diagrams, and then I'll save a lot of time. I mean, I'll still have to go through this like this, but it wouldn't have to be like making little boxes. And you can see like some of this was already things that I annotated previously, right? Like some of it is is repetitive at this point. And so these are the same as the event processors from backend. And you can start to see the impact of, you know, how I mentioned that like the on understand command, on underscore command, which is in my document, is going to influence the style, the style guide of the code it's going to write. You can tell that this is happening because now it's using backend underscore event, while the same concept before was just like prose that says backend event, right? So here it's prose. Actually, let me use a different color. Here it's been using prose to describe a backend event. And right, so this is prose. Then comes the command. Then it reinforces that code. Actually, this is code. And now it's going to start using more and more code words. You'll see. It's really interesting because now it suddenly says backend event. So you have to be cognizant of things like this. It's harder to see with big models because in bigger models, this kind of stuff will happen in the thinking stream and you won't see it. You'll just see the result and you'll be like, why is it writing code now? And you don't see this like slow transition from prose to code or from a certain style to another style. Like all of that will be hidden, and you, especially with the Anthropic and OpenAI censoring their thinking streams, you won't know why. You won't be like being able to make the connection of a word that you had in your input to the downstream stuff. That's why I'm pretty hyped that like small models or like open weights models now are so good because you can see the full thinking stream and you're able to clock stuff like that. right? Because yeah, I don't know. Uh, so here I'm getting ideas for my design that I didn't have before. Is that the mapping of backend events to UI events can be defined by both the backend and the front end, right? Like they both should be able to register that kind of stuff. And then similarly, mapping a UI command to the backend command, that should kind of be, where is this all happening? Should both of these be in the backend, and then the front end module is just like a JavaScript module that doesn't really need to know all too much? Or do we have, or should we like model it as a different? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know exactly what this inspires me to change. So that's good. Also, that's why taking a break now is pretty good. This is weird. This is weird. Those are blocks that I put in my early diagram that actually I knew kind of don't correspond to things. So this is wrong. This is not how the data should flow. Yeah, this is wrong. So it is the way I drew my diagrams, but it's not what I wanted to convey. So if you look at, like, I understand why it writes them up like this, because it's this part here, and those arrows are actually not the proper. Like, I understand what, like, the way I draw arrows and use arrows is always confusing to me as well. Or like, it's not confusing, but I know it is not clear when I do it, and it's more like doodling. So that is, oh, fuck this. Yeah, I'm getting tired. That I realize is a problem. This is, yeah, from here on out, all of this is probably useless because, yeah, all of this is useless. So that will probably be the case in this other document that I created, which is the one that has, I think, interleaved explanations. Yeah. So this is the third document. This time I asked it to do citations while I was writing this stuff. So here, see, it like has the broader view of things, and it has the word conversation. Anyway, people join, they won't have like the full context, but it's really interesting to compare these different documents. I'm pretty hyped to see for example, this is Opus. This is Opus output, and I'm like curious to see what it made out of this. All right, that's good. It uses weird word like substrate's job. I'm always looking out for words, right? Like the session connection state, that's good. Conversation routing. Here, I think it just thinks too much. It has been doing too much thinking. And it's using weird words that I never used. I think I used multiplexing maybe. This is good though. So thinking models are like two-edged sword. They can think too much and then misinterpret because they thought too much. But they can also just surface like the real core by connecting things that were very different. And this is actually pretty good. I like this. All right, I'm going to call it a day here. This was really instructive, that in the sense that the understanding of my diagram is much, much, much better than I thought it would be. This is really quite impressive and is going to be very, very useful to me. And my brain's blacking out. Cool. I'll think about this. Hopefully, I'll get some code written today. I probably won't do it on stream though, because this been like what 3 hours, and I haven't. Well, actually, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Let's see what our little Reddit thing is doing here. So 3030 is the port it should be running on. All right, nice. Why connections go stale? Connect to playground. We're connected. Whatever that means. Let me see. We can do ping, client list. There's found 3 clients, 2 idle, info clients, executed info clients, no answer. Find idle, unnamed, unnamed. Watch clients, starting client, watch every, found 3 clients, stop watch. Okay, connection clock, progress clock. Those are not working. So the first time you try out one of these playgrounds, usually there's a bunch of stuff you have to say, like, oh, this is not working because it didn't test it. But let's see. Oh, so it leaves the widget over here. Run client list to see all connections. Find your connection in the list, but it doesn't show the list, right? So that's one bug. Idle clients, connected clients, flags. So that's one error. Client list returns. Each field should tell you something useful. So here it ran the client list thing. Client kill idle. I'm not sure this is all like working all that well. Well, we'll have to check with this. Maybe there's a backend that's not running either. Anyway, I'm experimenting with this. I never did it with like, I think it just didn't restart the server. I think it's running in a tmux and it just didn't restart it. Stale connections. Wait, what? Oh, it's all right. The clock running? No. Yeah, I think I wonder if it's like faking things or not. So Redis is running. Yeah, this is weird. I wasn't sure about Minimax to see if Minimax does it. So what I'm gonna do now, I'm gonna compact it. Since we have like 50 minutes, let's use the last 15 minutes to get this playground running. I've always done them with like GPT-5 in the past, and Kimi. And interestingly enough, Kimi is so eager to execute actions that it's actually always delivered stuff that actually works, just because it banged its head so often on it. So let's do this. This whole textbook has been written by your little brother, and I think they messed up quite a bit. Ladder chapters are not there. I don't see client list results. I'm not sure the clients are real. The clocks in the web UI don't work. Go over the code in detail, create a review doc manager ticket with a detailed analysis and implementation guide on fixing. Add task, keep a diary as you work, and work on the tasks. Commit at appropriate intervals. All right. So this is why it's like nice to have something where you can kind of tell the clock. It tried to build it correctly. Obviously, it doesn't work, which means that it didn't lie to you, right? Um, that's why I like doing these like interactive things. Is then I can try things where I know that something should fail or should work a certain way, and run servers in tmux for easy killing. And then they're also able to playwright it, which means that they also spend some time correcting these things. So I don't know if they're like building in Minimax or in Kimi 2.5, having it out of the way quickly and then correcting it is faster and better, because I like the way Minimax writes usually, or at least that's my current vibe. Um, but we'll see how it goes. It probably could use some prompting to be a little bit more verbose, or telling it to do some research before it fills them out. Um, so we'll see what happens to. So let's see how far it gets, and then I have to call it. Um, all right, but this is the fact that Minimax was so good at interpreting my diagram makes me, and maybe Opus was even better. So maybe using Opus for that first pass, and then um, having from my scribbles and knowing how I can prompt engineer writing by hand in my sketchbook, that's going to be really useful, because I really love scribbling in my textbook, especially late at night. Um, so that might mean that I can write stuff late at night, in the morning, put it into Opus, and then immediately start implementing stuff with whatever model is appropriate, which is a big deal, because reloading all of this context from my sketchbook and then putting it to text, which is how I was doing things before, is a big mental thing for me, and usually quite a degradation in quality from my original idea. Because a lot of subtlety is captured in these diagrams that that even I am maybe not aware of. Curious about repair plan. Upload the repair plan to Remarkable, then continue. Wonder how long it's going to be as well. 200 lines so far. And you can see how quickly the costs balloon now that we're using GPT-5, right? Like the first pass with Kimi Minimax was 70 cents for all of this, and now we're already at $1.70. It flies. How much did the Opus cost? I don't know how you do cost. Okay, yeah. How much usage? All right, whatever. I crashed. I don't know why it tries to write to Claude JSON so often. All right, did it upload it? So now I can go to my tablet and oh, I closed the server. Hold on. All right. Stale 002 repair plan. So what did it find? So one thing that I was worried about is that it wouldn't do the WebSocket part. It didn't really understand what I meant by stale. Yeah, so I think a review, the Minimax stuff, Minimax is too sonnet-like. It likes lying. Kimi, interestingly enough, likes verifying itself, I think. I have a feeling. It's too bad that I don't have my plan anymore right now. Yeah. Yeah, there's just like Minimax I think is not a good first one. I think Minimax is good to write out the textbook and once you get it. Yeah. Yeah, Minimax. I've seen that many times now in the past where yeah, I don't know if it's a model that I'm gonna keep. It looks like a good one to do the visual analysis though, so maybe has a place. I'm not sure. GLM I really like. I don't know if I need it though because they doubled the codex plan, which now I'm like not using fully by any means. I think I'm using like 50% of it at most. Yeah. It's funny. It tested that, huh? Oh, so the WebSocket that it's doing is like for the playground, not for. Well, no, I guess it is, but what I wanted is like the thing communicating over WebSocket is getting stale too, or like the WebSocket doesn't answer anymore, which is separate from the Reddit. So that's a part of the textbook that it didn't properly understand, probably because the ChatGPT research I did wasn't clear enough. So we're already at $2 at this point. Let's see. Let's see if we get something that properly exercises at least the Reddit. I'm thinking a full rewrite of app.js might be the easiest approach. Also, let's see how many lines this is because it probably could be split, and I should probably have used something like React right from the get-go. Because it sounds like it might be more code, right? Like that it might be more complexity, but actually it allows from the training corpus and all of that allows the model to like quickly do smaller files. Type files is like what it leads it to do. And raw.js actually leads to these like monster files that it then has a lot of trouble editing. And then you waste a lot of tokens just editing a file that you thought would be easier, but is actually easier to engineer out. Because we're at 600 lines now already. All right, 600 lines is not too bad, but it still rewrote the file in its entirety when maybe it could have like switched out a couple of widgets and stuff like that. All right, this is also small model brain of like all the models love 8080. And then even if the server here was running on 3030, it's still like put 8080 in the HTML, which is like weird. Is it going to edit the full CSS? CSS stuff is also where you can quickly end up with huge files that can cause issues with edit tools, with especially with models like GL. So they feel like they're like messing up their edit tools. So having smaller models here instead of having like a 600 line long file is like pretty nice. So it's building. Let's see if it runs. It's gonna run it in a tmux. I don't know if it's probably gonna playwright it as well. We're at $2.50, so you can see how fast this flies, especially with playwright on a big ass model. That's why Kimmy is so nice, because Kimmy will do all the fuck shit, failing, and actually create a pretty good transcript of what failure modes look like for the system you're building without burning, a model like GPT-5 on figuring out that it should click on the right button and not the left or something like that. So I do miss my Kimmy. It has the chapter 15. That's cool. It has nothing interactive in here. The UX clock seems to be working. This also seems to be working. I wonder if we have like custom widgets anywhere. Well, let's go play with it. And actually, maybe I shouldn't play with it at the same time. Oh, it has added a lot of text. Whoa. That's crazy. Are they all this long now? That's awesome. It added a lot of code. It didn't add a lot of explanation text. That's interesting. Heartbeat simulation. Delete visualizer. Okay, what's that? So it has interactive widgets here. Oh, this is the lease visualizer. Oh, that's cool. And then you should be able to see it over here. Kill workers, simulate work. This is all pretty cool. Like this is the stuff I was looking for, where you can like really start to if I know that this connection is real, then I can start like really starting to trust things. I'm not sure I like all of this code in here, but maybe I wish I had like paragraphs and stuff like that. So maybe I'll prompt it to this. But first I'm going to let it, yeah, so here it's like looking at a job queue. This is the stream visualizer we had before. Yeah, it's all pretty interesting. But we're already at $3.20. Like you can tell how quickly a bigger model can make this expensive. Because if I continue adding like the textbook and maybe some more widgets, I could see this being like $10. Which, to me, it's kind of worth it. But then it's starting to be like, maybe you should calm it. Because I haven't assessed the quality of this also, like if this does end up being like not very good, um, then $10 for something that's forgettable is like it's that's not the amount of energy I want to burn on something like this, and pay for, obviously. Uh, I'm on my plan. Like I'm just putting the API costs just to keep a sense of reality. Even if the API is subsidized, which I don't really know, but I can highly suspect that it actually costs more energy than $3.60 now. Um, I just kind of want to be aware of how much money this kind of is outside of the plan. Um, hey, Sinfinity, I'm building. Well, I'm like wrapping up my stream. I was building like a web chat framework. And as I was building it, I knew that my fundamentals on like stale connections and like stale event driven stuff is like a little bit shaky. So I decided to start building like a little interactive playbooks. Yeah, I do check comments. Sorry, I was, I don't know what I was doing. I'm getting tired. I've been at it for 3 hours now. It was pretty heady. So the last thing I'm looking at is like fixing this textbook about Redis. Um, and then calling it a wrap in like 5 minutes, or like no, I actually we're at 3 hours exactly. One thing I'm gonna do is like have it rewrite stuff a little bit to have longer paragraphs and maybe bullet point lists and stuff like that. So I'm going to add this. It's repair live chapter loading. I think it's getting towards the end of things. And then my brain's not able to absorb this. So it's good to take a break. It looks like the backend is disconnected. So we'll look at that. But what we did today was uh, connect to. I'm going to push this to GitHub if you want. And well, if I push it to GitHub anyway. Most of the session today was about trying to understand my diagrams to turn them into implementation plans. Was like a thing I wanted to experiment with to build a web chat framework that I can reuse, because I keep writing the same code over and over. So I had this diagram here, and I just put a screenshot of it in. I put a screenshot of it into Minimax, and it actually was surprisingly better than what I expected. It was able to create like a pretty robust write-up document, and then I spent a bunch of time mostly like reviewing this, and then at some point it was wrong, but that was because my diagram was like not interpretable. But all of this upfront part, which I guess now comes mostly from the text I wrote, or like the bullet point lists I made, um, was pretty on point despite like all my comments on here. And then I experimented with having it tell me how it analyzed the document. So this was like a new run, and this is really impressive. I think this is Opus now. Opus is also pretty good, but I was getting tired, and I was like, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna stop here before I review the Opus document. But I'm actually curious. I'm just gonna like um, I'm just gonna see what it did. So this is the bullet point list. So maybe this is not as crazy as I thought. So here it actually started building things out, and this is actually on point. Interesting. Yeah, so see, and then it mentioned like stale connections was something that was mentioned in both connect through Instagram. I don't have Instagram. You can follow me on YouTube. I'm also on X, program with AI on X. And I can just look up my name. I should be able to find me. Um, yeah, this is pretty encouraging. I didn't expect the results to be that good. Maybe most of it came from my handwriting. Maybe it came from the diagrams. But in any case, the description of the diagrams it gave is really pretty on point. So that means that it does have visual understanding that I can leverage. So let's see. So this is still going, and see, we're already at $5. This is so this is why I kind of try to avoid going straight to GPT-5 for Greenfield, because I mean maybe I should. I don't know. So now can I connect to the playground? Yeah. So now this is running. I do have a client list. I can go to the Redis handles connection. I can kind of, because the things are so long now, this is kind of a problem here. All right. Interesting. There's interesting stuff here to test for sure. All right, I'm gonna call this like a 80% experiment success. Um, Probably should try to do this with Opus and one version with GPT-5 just for fun. But I'll do this. I'll do this next time. It's a program with AI. Hey, nice to meet you. And let me see. It's right here. There you go. Cool. Thank you. Thank you. See you there. I don't post very often because I don't really like it there, but I'll try to. Gonna be trying to open a Patreon or something like that. All right.